Poets Contest and the 2004 winner of the Pavel Surut Poetry Fellowship in Prague. He's been a finalist, semifinalist, and runner-up in many other poetry-related competitions, such as Arts and Letters Poetry Prize. Dr. Gardner said that his poems startle and surprise. His diction is sharp, and his insights are keen. Yet the work embodies much mystery, layered over with knowledge, erudition even. He moves from landscape to landscape, from time to time, with great ease. He understands the ways and means of imagery, clear and clean, and he wields metaphor with a deftness rarely seen these days. This is a formidable collection with strong poems from beginning to end. The 2007 first place winner of the Oscar Arnold Young Contest is Alex Grant for his book, Chains and Mirrors.
And the poem is about Captain Scott. In 1911, the English and the Norwegians were locked in a titanic struggle to reach the South Pole. Nobody knows why to this day. But growing up in Scotland, Captain Scott, and particularly Captain Oates, who was a member of his party, were held up to we kids as role models and heroes. And the legend was that they were trapped in a tent a few miles from the base camp, they were going to die, and Captain Oates went out into the blizzard to his certain death in order to give his colleagues a better chance of survival. As an adult, I did a little bit of research and found that these guys actually couldn't stand each other. And so based on the Python-esque aspect of the search to find the South Pole, I came up with an alternative version of events, which is called Captain Scott's Lost Diary. And the epigraph is Captain Oates' famous quote, "I'm just going outside and may be gone for some time." 6 weeks in this tent, and we are all close to breaking point. Captain Oates abuses himself constantly, even during dinner. He claims it's simply a mechanism to keep his body temperature up, though we all have our doubts. I no longer feel comfortable shaking hands with him, and last night he told me that he wants me to have his babies. He insists on calling me Falcon, though he knows I detest my middle name. The natural order of things seems to be breaking down. The men have begun to question his authority of late, especially since the unfortunate frozen yogurt incident. My dear wife is constantly in my thoughts, though Captain Oates has taken to wearing a wig he made from a penguin skin and insisting in a ridiculous falsetto impersonation of Mary that I take him to dinner at Claridge's. This strikes me as conduct unbecoming of an English hero, but I find myself strangely attracted by his buffoonish attempts at humour, and on 2 occasions I've had to physically restrain myself from mentioning his efforts in dispatches. The wind is unrelenting, the cold bites at every nerve, and Oates has threatened that if we don't go to dinner soon, he'll go alone, and that he may be gone for some time. Midges around here, but a midge is a small biting insect like a gnat that's indigenous to Scotland and England. It's mentioned in the poem. The poem's called Giant. I read once that garden midges only live for around 10 minutes, and as I watched a swarm of them, I picked one out, kept my eyes fixed on him, lit a cigarette, and tried to imagine his life. I did the math and decided that 8 midge-seconds equaled 1 of our years, and as he moved from the top to the bottom of the cloud, he had 2 affairs and a nervous breakdown right there. He spiraled up again, and by the time he'd reached the top, he'd sent all 1,700 of his children to a fashionable private swarm in the upper reaches of a more desirable neighbouring tree. He'd gained a little weight by now, and couldn't fly quite as fast as he used to,
but he compensated by quietly negotiating his own private airspace and by employing some of the younger midges to bite people for him. By the time my cigarette had burned less than halfway down, he'd written a number of wildly successful self-help flying manuals, as well as his acclaimed study of midge relationships. Female midges are from the eastern bows, male midges are from the western. He'd had liposuction and wing implants by this time, and was campaigning tirelessly to have the trashy clown in the next tree publicly censured. His therapist advised him to adopt a lower public profile, but he was insistent that he alone had secured the swarm's tenure of the tree, and that the other midges ought to damn well recognise his contribution and reward him accordingly. He died 3/4 of the way into my cigarette, convinced that the rest of the swarm were plotting to run him down with a golf cart. He was truly a giant among midges. And the last poem I want to read was written when a friend came back from a trip to Argentina, and he told me this story about how they were plagued with a plague of non-indigenous giant beavers who were cutting down trees and causing extensive flooding in Argentina because it's really flat, blah, blah, blah. So for some reason he thought this would interest me, I don't know why. So I looked it up, and sure enough, it was true. The story was out there. And so the poem came out of that, and it's called Argentina's Huge Beaver Problem. And the epigraph of the poem is, Giant beavers flood land of fire, Reuters. And one word that I do want to mention in advance is boleadoras. Because when I wrote this, I used the word bolas, which are the 3 balls on leather strings that gauchos used to bring cows down by throwing them around their legs. And I did a reading, and a woman had lived in Argentina for 75 years or something like that, informed me that it was actually boleadoras, not bolas. So that's what they are. Argentina's Huge Beaver Problem. Whether this title relates to outsized rodents or some enormous beaveresque conundrum withers if you know that in Tierra del Fuego they pay $1 a tail. A knowing diminution of this large aquatic rodent of the genus Castor, fathered by Zeus in the form of a swan, born from an egg with Pollux, his twin, protectors of sailors, whose brotherly love flickers nightly in the constellation Gemini, under whose white stars gauchos tote their boleadoras, beef hooves waiting for entanglement, spindly forelegs propping up mounds of meat in this bloody menagerie. Etymology, Old French ménage, add in à toi, and we're back to the beaver. At the end of the world, the pampas are flooding, the Paraná River gushing over cut banks of Lenga and Guindo, oceans pouring into oceans, flatland inundation in the mouth of black water, ground down by the smallest white teeth. Thank you.